Everybody, welcome to the SafePrep Show. My name is Justin. Today our guest is Dewey Like Donuts. Brother, how are you, man? Good to see you. You're looking good. You're sounding good.
I don't know about looking good, but I appreciate you having me on. I know we've been talking about this for about 6 years now.
We've been bouncing it back and forth, so trying to work the kinks out. I'm glad you're here, man. So you are a very fairly complicated guy as far as your content goes. At least you talk about a bunch of different subjects. Before we dive into a few of those, I want you to, for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your TikTok and social media journey, and but I want them to know you first before we get into the meat and Thrive taters.
That's good. It's a nice plug there for Thrive, huh? So my real name's Jeremy. So not Dewey. For those that, everybody knew me by Dewey. And I'm like, no, it's not Dewey. It's a long story. It's a username that I started over a year ago on TikTok and was just making something funny. I needed a username, and it turned out to actually be a decent platform for me at the time. So I put this video out on TikTok and it got like 5,000 followers in like a week from just some video that I made about which one was it? Was about them coming door to door to give vaccines, and it was just a funny video. And I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. And I've always been into prepping. And so that was like, well, maybe I can have a channel about prepping and help people. Because I've always liked to just help people, to teach, and I've always been of the belief that if I can teach someone to prep on them by themselves, prep for themselves, their family, then that's one less person that the system has to worry about, or one less person that I need to worry. Like if I can teach my neighbors to be prepared, they're not going to come knocking on my door if something happens. And so that was kind of what started the whole thing is, let me see if I can teach people to prep. And, over the years, I've learned a lot about prepping and things that aren't sustainable. For example, like if it hits the fan, MREs are only going to last for so long. You got to be able to replenish what you eat. Sure, you can have pews and go take from your neighbors, but do you really want to be that guy? And I don't. So then the homesteading kind of gardening, let's call it gardening, came into the picture and kind of turned into more of homesteading than gardening, even though like we're not a full-blown homestead at all, nowhere close to a homestead. I look at some of the people that I follow and follow me back on TikTok, and I'm like, dang, that is my dream. What they are living is what my dream is. They've got 5 acres, 10, 20 acres. They've got pigs and cows and everything in between. And I'm like, I got chickens. That's all I got. I got chickens in a garden. But it's something. It's something.
And it's also where a lot of people have to start. Right. We all dream like our next house it'll be in the country. We're gonna have some property, mm-hmm. But right now we're on a quarter acre. But there's a lot you can do with a quarter acre, and you're proof of that, and you help people learn how to do it.
There is, and there's some other names that I'll drop, that do the same kind of thing. There's a guy named Curtis Stone who gardens on. He used to. I think he's got a bunch of property now, but he used to garden in other people's backyards, and a lot can be done on a quarter acre or a third of an acre. We're on a third of an acre, so we don't have a ton of space. But I've got a chicken. I got a chicken run, a chicken coop. We've got some garden beds, some stuff in the ground, and we've got a canner. You can see the canned goods back there, and we try to grow as much of our own as we can. Like my TikTok channel turned from prepping to kind of homesteading, prepping, and it goes back and forth. There was some political stuff in there, but I pulled a lot of that stuff down because it was divisive, and it got me flagged a few times. So I just said, you know what? It's one of those things that I don't have to be that guy that's divisive. I can have left people, right people, center people, and we can all work together and learn from people.
When I started my TikTok in probably March, I went into it thinking, I was like, I don't want to do politics. I don't want to do big conspiracy theories. I don't want to really get into faith and religion. And I'm interested in all those topics. And
Right.
I have beliefs on all those topics. But like you said, it's divisive and it's not good. It's not good for teaching
No, it's not,
and
because
helping people.
you
And that's
turn
what we're
people
trying to
away.
do.
Right.
Absolutely.
And from you, and you're trying to run a business off of it too, though, right? So
Mhm.
there's a, I
Yes,
think
sir.
there's a different, there's a different angle there, because like we've got a company where we, sell T-shirts, which we're shutting that down. But like I had some stuff out there, and I posted some political stuff one day, and I was like I lost some followers. I'm like, I should probably. I complain when companies get into politics. I should follow suit and not get into politics. I should.
And
I should run a company.
it's not always the easiest to bite your tongue
It's not.
and not say what you want to say. And thank goodness we can take content down as we choose to.
Well, sort of, but I mean, if somebody downloads it, it's out there. Once you
True.
put it out there, it's
True.
It's fair game. So I pulled all the political stuff off because I just didn't want to be divisive. I think you close yourself off. In fact, there was one video that I had probably a month or so ago, and somebody came in and commented that until Republicans or something, basically making the comment that Republicans are scared.
And you might want to tell them.
And I was like, hey,
prep too.
by the way, I have a bunch of liberal people that follow me out here that aren't conservative conspiracy theorists. Like prepping, homesteading, it's all, we all need to do it regardless of what our political affiliation is or isn't. It's smart, it's wise to be prepared, even if you don't have a year's worth of food and supplies. I mean, start with a week, a couple of weeks, a month, and work your way up. And everybody's, like you said earlier, everybody's got to start somewhere.
It's a lot of people are coming over to. I'll say this: a lot of people are starting to think about things differently. As far as preparedness goes. So we got a lot of new folks, and we like talking to new preppers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest pitfalls that new people fall into is setting a goal that is way too large. And
like
I want to have
acres in the land and having a self-sufficient homestead.
Or I want to have.
Moving from an apartment. You currently live in an apartment, and I'm gonna. Yeah, that's.
I want to have 6 months worth of food and water. Mm-hmm. I want to be able. It's you. You got to
start with a month though. Like I know people that don't. They couldn't make it a week. If it hit the fan, which it may never hit the fan, but if it did, they couldn't make it a week. Start with a month.
Baby steps. Set small goals. Get to those goals. Celebrate the goals, and then set you a bigger goal.
That's
because
right.
if you start off with that big, unobtainable goal, you get discouraged, and a lot of people just quit. And
exactly right.
If you're starting from zero, guys, do a weekend, 2 days. I want to be able to take care of my family for 2 days.
72-hour kit. Start with a 72-hour kit. Like because and that's where I tell people to start when they ask me, like, well, hey, where should I start? 72 hours, 3 days, basics, like basic necessities, food, water, shelter, medications. If you're on medications, have 3 days worth of medications. I mean, stuff like that. Have that in a go bag that if you ever had to leave your house, if you live in California and have, the threat of wildfires, if you've got a tornado coming and you're in Tornado Alley, if you've got a hurricane and you're on the coast, I mean, have the go bag ready with 72 hours to get out. And then from there, a couple weeks, and then from there a month, and then 2 months, and then 6 months, and a year. I mean, and you'll get there eventually. And people look at it and go, it's so expensive. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know.
I know, but some of them are out there listening to us. You have got to stop making excuses.
Yeah.
And realize that if it's money, we get that. We're all in the kind of the same boat here with inflation and prices. We all have
limited resources.
We all have limited resources. Don't be upset that people started before you. You can and you can be a prepper for 20 years and you're never going to think you have enough. There's always something else you can learn, something else you can buy, something else you can grow, and you've got to stop coming up with excuses. And the ones I hear a bunch are, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough room. I don't have storage. Nobody in my family supports me.
We got rid of a bunch of books.
Exactly.
Like, we don't read we had a whole bunch of books that we haven't read in years. And we're like, you know what? We don't need them anymore. Put them under the bed.
There are ways. There are
nooks and crannies in your house.
Nooks and crannies. As far as the money goes, shopping at a different place, buying different brands, couponing. There are ways around every single one of y'all's excuses. I promise you.
So all right. So let's take a step back to where I got started with prepping, because we didn't have a whole lot of money then, and this was 2008-9 when the financial situation happened and kind of hit me like, well, what if it crashes? Like, we don't have more than 2 weeks worth of food in our house. And so I started with rice and beans. And am I going to enjoy eating rice and beans day in and day out? Nope. But I won't die. And so we bought big bags of rice, big bags of beans, Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, and I packaged my own food. And it's arguably got a 20, 25-year shelf life.
I have told people over the past 6 months that if you just started, all of us feel like something's coming, even though we don't know if it's coming.
Right.
We're preppers because we don't know what's going to happen. We're not preppers because we know what's going to happen. And if you've waited, if you've just started, I think that things like rice and beans, even though you prefaced it with, am I going to enjoy eating that all the time? No. Rice and beans, nutritionally, as long as you've got essential fats added to that somewhere, and a lot of tasty things to put in your rice and beans.
That's right.
Spices, and you started canning recently. I mean, you take rice and you take beans, and then you take meat that you've canned that's got the delicious meat juices in it, and you pour out. Go ahead, man.
There it is. There's meat, ground beef right there, canned ground beef.
That's the first thing I canned because my wife gets
the first thing you can.
Yes.
Whoa.
No, I want the tasties.
I know, but that's a lofty hey, I'm going like for the kill.
No, I wouldn't. What do you think? I was gonna can water first? Nah.
I mean vegetables. I mean like the first thing that we can, like tomato sauces and green beans and zucchini. Which zucchini was a little bit weird. I don't know how that's going. We haven't even tasted it yet. We really need to open it up and try it. But yeah, but you're right though. Tasty stuff, meat, yep, fat juice, all that kind of stuff. Put that in there with your rice and beans.
It's and I tell people too, because you can get into worrying about how to store this stuff correctly. I tell people, if you're starting from nothing, guys, get things first. Let's get some stuff and have it in the house, because a lot of this stuff is going to keep, at least in the short term, just fine as long as you're keeping it in a fairly cool, dry place.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we've got some things taken care of and you can feed your family for an entire weekend, we can worry about, let's make this last a little longer and learn how to use Mylar and vacuum sealing and all those things, because it can be overwhelming.
It absolutely can. And where I'll tell a lot of people to start when they want to start with food storage, and we're talking like a week to 2 weeks worth of food. We're not talking about 6 months. We're not talking years of long-term food storage. We're talking about, I don't have more than a week of food in my house. So what I start with is, okay, when you go to the grocery store and you're buying spaghetti sauce, you're buying green beans, you're buying whatever you're buying at the store, instead of buying one canned good, buy 2 this week or buy 3, because a canned good's what, $1 maybe? So buy 2 of what you've got, put them one behind the other, and then rotate, and then buy again, and just create your own grocery store, essentially.
So you had wanted to talk about the reasons preparedness is so important, why people should prep, because there's a lot of people that are just now starting to wake up, people that aren't woke up at all. What are your thoughts on the reasons we do what we do?
Well, because we don't know what's coming. Like you said a minute ago. I mean, like that is a very, very, good observation. Like we have no idea what is coming. None of us can tell the future. And we can look at the signs and we can see, hey, this is not looking promising. We've got our friends on the other side of the world or in the middle of a war, and that could affect us. And we've got a pandemic in 2020 that shut down our economy for 2 weeks that has had now ripple effects into the grocery stores. It's even like now, like there's still things that we can't find in the grocery store that we could find 3 years ago. Like those are the reasons. Those are the main like big reasons. What if I can't get this in the store because of some event that I'm not prepared for, that I can't even see coming down the pipe? That's like the big reason. I mean, some people are like, oh, the zombies are coming, the apocalypse, the end of the world, and come on. I mean, maybe who knows? Maybe, but the real thing for me is like, what about a job loss? What if your spouse loses a job or you lose your job? What if your parents lose their jobs or have an illness and they've got to come live with you, and then they don't have any money, and then they're living in your house and you don't have enough you don't have enough food for them? Like, if you've prepped and you've got stuff stored, well, maybe you can offset some of those extra expenses by just having a little bit of extra. And if you start with that stuff, the big catastrophic events kind of take care of themselves.
If you're prepping for the small stuff, you're prepping for the big stuff. And it's much less overwhelming if you're prepping for the small things than the big things. You've got to.
Well, like we get tornadoes here all the time. So, like, we've got stuff in a basement for tornadoes. I mean, and we've got fair warning about tornadoes. We don't have earthquakes. We don't have wildfire. I mean, I guess we could have a wildfire, but we don't have hurricanes. But like, we kind of know like these are things that we need to worry about and be prepared for. And we've got a spot in the basement with supplies that we need. And like, we're prepared for things that are likely to impact us. And by doing so, we kind of prepare for some of the big things.
Absolutely.
It sounds kind of like what you preach, I'm sure, right?
It is. And, I'm now that I know where you're at, we're kind of in the same boat. I'm in Tennessee, and tornadoes are pretty much our big threat as well. And we get nighttime tornadoes through here. So,
yeah.
But we all see signs, even though none of us, and I tell people I'm not the prepper news, but I mean, we've got inflation, we've got a recession that we're in that they'll announce next year. And
after the elections, right?
After the elections, there's that. And then you've got none of us have a huge grasp on the technicalities of what's going on with the supply chain. But I know that this global economy is crumbling, and
it's shaky ground right now.
You have to look at what have we learned over the past few years about supply chain interruptions. Think back to toilet paper. Think back to Lysol and bleach. Okay.
Hand sanitizer. Yep.
Hand sanitizer, face mask, baby formula.
That was.
So look at those examples and in your mind, think about that happening to other things.
What are things that you wouldn't be able to live without?
And that is at its simplest.
Or struggle to live without, I should say.
Yes. Some of it's survival, some of it's comfort. And but that's how you got to think about this. And prepping and homesteading and self-reliance all have different definitions. And prepping is planning and having stuff. But like you said, eventually the prepping's not going to help you, and you got to move on to homesteading and self-reliance. So that seems like a pretty good segue.
Yeah, that was very smooth.
You're welcome.
I mean, like that's a very good segue from prepping to self-sufficiency, homesteading, because you have to be able to replenish what you've prepared for. Like if it hits the fan, let's just say that the economy collapses, world war breaks out, and we can't get anything in the store. If you've got a year's worth of supplies prepped, I mean, you have to understand people are going to be knocking at your door. You know, how do you handle that? Do you share? If you share, then you don't have a year anymore. You've got maybe 6 months. And then you've got to at some point be able to replenish that. How do you do it? By going and stealing, other than going and stealing it from somebody else, is will you grow your own?
How to handle that knock at the door is a whole show in itself, right there, ain't it?
It is, and we can talk about it one day. Not this one, but next time you invite me back, let's talk about the knock at the door, because I don't want to be the guy that turns someone away, but I also don't want to be the guy that gets shot because I won't share. So like, there's this whole balance of how do you handle that. But so growing our own, we prepped in the late 2000s. And then within the last year, I said, okay, we need to start, like, we've had gardens for 10 years or so on and off. I've done very terribly at it for years, and I've done very well at it in some years. But this year we said, okay, look, we need to like there's a whole bunch of jams up there. We got some chicken noodle soup, some tomato sauce, some meat, some veggies. And I'm like, okay, now we've learned how to do this. We can do this again, and we can grow it again next year. And we can replenish it again. And eventually, guess what? If it hits the fan and I use all my preps, I've at least got some vegetables. I might become a vegetarian, but I got eggs. That's right. Chickens. We got to talk about chickens too at some point, but that's why I got chickens.
Let's talk about chickens, because so we live in the country, but we're in a subdivision. Yep. Very, I've thought about chickens, and my concern with chickens is volume, as far as their loudness, and I have to be
even the hens are loud.
I need you to get off my truck,
and that's my hiccup. But I'm glad that I have asked around and looked around to know that because you can't just jump into rabbits and quail and chickens. You need to do your research, because it's there's a lot to it.
Well, so let's, 20. All right, so we got our first chickens in 2017, and I got a flock of 6 and lost all 6 of them. It's a long story. I don't want to talk about it. I might cry on your podcast, and I don't want to do that. I'm kidding, but I learned everything not to do with chickens in that first run of chickens, and I still feel terrible about some of it. But now we have in 2020. I remember sitting on the couch hearing 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And I looked at my wife and I said, there's the beginning of the end. Like, this will have ripple effects through our economy for years. I said, we're getting chickens. I'm getting chickens again. Because I still had the infrastructure. I just didn't replenish them after I lost that first flock. And so we had gone about a year and a half without chickens. And so I went and bought 20 chickens, 20 baby chicks. It's like, we're all in at this point. And we were getting 12 to 14 eggs a day, and more eggs than I could eat. I was giving them. I tried selling them, but nobody wanted to spend money on eggs at that point. Now I could probably sell them for a fortune, but I don't have enough to sell anymore because my flock has dwindled. They've gotten older, and it's a whole thing. But that was kind of our first. And we've gardened, like I said, for years, but that was our first really kind of step into homesteading, I felt like, because now we have livestock and we've got eggs that we can eat. Like, if it all hit the fan, I've got eggs, I've got preps that I've got, we're growing our own food. I'm like, will we live happy? Probably not, but we'll live. And you've got to be able to replenish it. And so, but gardening is like chickens, for example. Like, you don't just jump right into it. There's a lot that goes into it. Gardening's the same way. Trying to set up a homestead and garden and create this massive garden that's going to provide all your needs. That's not easy. And so for the person that starts gardening, it's kind of the same thing with prepping. Start small. Find out what grows well in your area and put a few plants in the ground. And then next year add to it. And the next year add to it again.
You can really, there's a a lot of research involved if you want your gardens to do well. But you can do all the research in the world and your garden still not do well. And I tell
You can do all
people,
the
don't
research in the world, and if you don't try it, you'll never grow it.
trying. So when it comes, if you don't have a garden and you got that gut feeling like, yeah, let's start a garden. I think most people realize that even on a quarter acre residential lot, you can probably dig a hole somewhere and put some stuff in the ground.
Dude, I
That's
cut
what you
Bermuda
have to
grass
do.
and put something in the ground.
You have to put stuff in the ground
Mm-hmm.
because most things like being put in the ground and something is going to come up, and you just have to start to experiment, and you have to be okay with making mistakes and then learning from those, and that's what makes your garden the next year better.
Yeah. Well, there's the old saying, nature finds a way, or life finds a way. And like you put something in the ground, it's going to do everything that it can to survive. I mean, you've got to take care of it, but you don't have to get all of the nutrients right and the pH right. I mean, yes, it helps. It's going to help produce better yields, but I've thrown tomatoes in the clay soil in Alabama and completely neglected them and gotten tomatoes. I've thrown potatoes in the soil and gotten potatoes and completely neglected. I grew potatoes last year in a 5-gallon bucket, and I got somewhat of a decent harvest out of them. I completely neglected them. So like life will find a way with vegetables, with your garden. It's there's a learning curve to it, but
What's the
it's not
best
that
advice?
difficult.
What's the best advice you can give somebody that feels like they have the room and they feel the need, they have that gut feeling, I need to put some things in the ground? As far as the options they have, because it doesn't always have to be in the ground. You mentioned container gardening, which we're just now starting to get into.
Yep. I did that for the first time this year.
What's the best advice you have for folks that just need a swift kick in the butt to make it happen in the spring?
Plant what you like first. So don't, like, if you don't like zucchini, don't plant zucchini. So plant what you like, plant what grows well in your area. And then if you want something like of substance, potatoes. Potatoes are so easy. All you got to do is put them in the dirt, fill them up a little bit, and then as they grow, put some more dirt in, and then you just kind of mound them up. And as they mound up, they grow more potatoes. Just put them in the ground.
We're close. When do you get your potatoes in the ground?
When did I put them in? I put them in like May.
Okay.
And I got a harvest. Now my harvest this year was a complete joke. I swear to you, everything's off. Everything is off this year, and that's a whole nother topic we can get onto. The magnetic pole shifts, it's a real thing. It's throwing off our weather, I think. That's just my opinion. I'm not an expert, but so everything's been off this year. I've got a gardener that I know who we actually get a lot of our produce from, and some of our, like, he's at a farmer's market here locally, and he'll give us like extras that he can't sell. And so I get a bunch of stuff from him, and he's talking about like how his pepper plants this year, like here's the base, and up to here he's got peppers, and then everything above that, like there's no blooms above that anymore. Like, what is it? Is it the atmosphere? Is it chemtrails? I mean, I'm not saying it is. I'm just, a lot of people.
It's something, and it could be the soil, it could be the weather, it could be the seeds, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get our potatoes in the ground early enough this year. So,
well, the thing with potatoes, when did you get them in?
I don't think we ever got them in. I think because this year was like it didn't get warm until it got warm, and I know we were late.
Spring. It was winter.
There was no spring.
Yeah. What part of Tennessee are you in? East, west?
We're in middle.
Right,
yeah, we're in middle.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm outside of Birmingham, so
okay.
North central.
Alabama, gotcha. So pretty much the same weather.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's our potatoes this year. Now I grew the little red potatoes. Next year I'm going to do like baking potatoes and see if I get better yields from those. But I grew them in grow bags this year, which are easy because you can move them around. You can grow them on a patio. If you live in an apartment, you got you a balcony, Get you some grow bags, some containers, put them out on the balcony. As long as you got a south-facing view or you got enough sunlight out there, they'll do all right. But that's something to start with, and it's cheap. Tomatoes take up a lot of space. Tomatoes, cucumbers, all those things take up a lot of space. But things that can be in small spaces, potatoes.
We even though we have a yard and a garden, we did the same thing. You're always learning something new, or you always want to try something else. So we ordered 10 or 27-gallon grow bags. And our thought behind that was, well, you can put stuff on the patio, which is going to keep my lazy butt having to walk to the garden. But those kind of solutions for, especially like you said, apartment dwellers or people with small backyards, that takes care of that excuse, y'all. They make things that are not expensive that you can grow food in.
Well, I've seen like the grow towers, and those things are expensive. But,
yes.
But I've got like in my Amazon link, I've got a link to some grow bags that I bought that are 7-gallon grow bags, like 10 of them, and they're like 20 something bucks, I think. I don't know what they are now. I think that they were at the time like 25, 28 bucks. But I actually have tomatoes growing in them right now. I planted. So the guy that I was talking about at the farmer's market, he gave me some Cherokee purple tomatoes, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take the seeds out of these because these are the best tomatoes I have ever put in my mouth. And I planted them. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time. So I planted them in the grow bags so that I could bring them inside if I had to. And we're getting our first frost this week. They're still green. I've got green tomatoes. So I've cut the tops of them off so that they'll ripen as quick as possible. But I'm going to have to move them into the garage. But that's why I put them in grow bags, because I can extend my grow season.
Exactly, and that's something that I'm actually just getting into the research on, is what can I grow in my garage, or at least be able to shelter in my garage when the weather's not what it needs to be. Because once you get that first frost, it's really hard to do much of anything, at least where we're at, folks, till the spring. But
I failed miserably this year at putting in a fall garden. Miserably. I didn't do it. I ran out of time and didn't do it. And I'm kicking myself.
We didn't do it either. Ooh. I can show you videos on the back patio. My wife grew stuff from seed, had it all nice and planted in she bought some nice little planters to grow seedlings. And it's all just sitting on my patio on the garden bench, wilted. And no, didn't happen this year either, brother.